Now, Serbia's war crimes suspect and former leader Vojislav Seselj returns to Belgrade today and heads an anti-government march only a day after his release from United Nations Tribunal in The Hague. Thousands of his supporters take part in the rally as he calls for the overthrowing of the government. Suad Ahmed with this report.
For someone fighting terminal cancer, Serbian nationalist Vojislav Seselj appears quite resilient. Only one day after his release from The Hague, where he was detained for the past 12 years over war crimes, Seselj leads an anti-government rally in Belgrade. He vowed to topple the government, which he thinks has betrayed Serbs, calling for a mass mobilization of Serbian patriots against the current pro-Western regime and to oppose any attempt to make Serbia join both the European Union and NATO. The two men he's gunning for are his former allies, now ironically heading the government as Prime Minister and President. In 2008, the two men left Seselj's Serb Radical Party and established their own pro-European SNS party. Seselj accuses them of being traitors who gave up Serb nationalism to be part of the West. Supporters of Seselj attended in their thousands at today's rally, welcoming his release by the UN Tribunal. Seselj was detained for allegedly recruiting, financing and inciting followers to murder, ethnic cleansing and other war crimes in Bosnia and Croatia. He voluntarily surrendered to the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in 2003 and went on trial 4 years later. His long detention without a verdict became an embarrassment to the War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague. Seselj was later released on humanitarian grounds as he reportedly has cancer. However, his return angered many victim groups in neighboring Croatia and Bosnia. They raised fear that eventually no one will be held accountable for all the crimes committed in Croatia during the 1991 to 1995 war. Now Seselj returns with a nationalist rhetoric, and his main concern is to overthrow the government. But with Serbia going through many social and political changes in his absence, many see this as highly unlikely.
Joining us live on Skype is expert in Balkan affairs, Marko Gasic. Marko, thank you very much for joining us one more time. Do you think Seselj's return puts more pressure on the Serbian government in changing its policies towards the EU?
Well, it does a lot to. It will do a lot to discredit them because they've been wearing national colours while effectively, some would say, betraying the national cause. And in favour of the Western orientation of their predecessors. So by being someone who is unashamedly nationalist and patriotic and very much against Western imperialism, Seselj has the power to discredit them even if he doesn't have the power to replace them.
Okay, so many say that this nationalistic rhetoric that he has no longer serves him in Serbia. How much of Serbia has changed, and are the majority in favour of closer ties with the EU?
I missed the beginning of your question.
What I'm saying,
but
many say that the nationalistic rhetoric that Seselj has no longer serves him in Serbia. Now, how much of Serbia has changed, and are the majority in favour of closer ties with the EU?
I think Serbia is divided as for so long on the question of East or West, Russia or the EU. Many people would prefer to be close to hug the EU and Western institutions, so that those Western institutions don't bomb them with their free hand that they would otherwise have. So there's an element of coercion in this Serbian support for the EU, which, as I say, is about half the country, one could say. His nationalist rhetoric isn't the kind of thing that people necessarily want to say themselves. It's rather like a loud man at a party who may say the things that a lot of people feel, but will be a little bit unpleasant while he's saying them. And so he may say home truths, which will be less palatable because he says them in a very opinionated way. Nevertheless, his views will hit home and will provide a problem for the current government.
But do you think that kind of personality rallies the people to his claim? Do you think that kind of personality, the man in a party, like you said, do you think that rallies people's claims towards him?
Well, he will rally his traditional support. He may do something to unify the general mass of the population that does agree that the Western orientation is leading Serbia, like many other parts of the world, into further poverty, indebtedness to the to the IMF rather. He will certainly have a lot of support, and his sheer desire will win him votes, because in his absence, his entire political wing has really lacked a strong leader, lacked a strong message, lacked a strong presence, and Seselj will provide all of those. So yes, he will do a lot to revitalize his side of the political debate. Nevertheless, he won't do much to convert the others, that's for sure.
So what's next actually for Seselj? Now that he's rallied the masses, what's next in his policy or in his long-term view?
I think you're asking me what's next for Seselj, if I
Yes.
understood. I'm sorry that the link is so bad here. What's next for him is campaigning and medicine, because really the question is, why has he been released now? And it's quite possible that the tribunal, which is whose handling of the Seselj case has been an absolute travesty of justice, where perjury has been committed, witnesses have admitted being doctored by the prosecution, prosecution witnesses have apologized to Seselj and asked to embrace him. It's been an absolute travesty which hasn't been noted by the Western media. Well, it appears to me that they may well have let him go in order that he didn't die in the jail where he'd been held for 5 years without trial, and where he's been for nearly 12 years without even submitting his defense case. So this has been the worst of many very bad trials held by this ad hoc court, this tribunal in the Netherlands. It's a scandalous procedure, and I think they may well have allowed him to go to avoid yet another embarrassment, which is of him dying in prison while waiting for them to afford him some kind of justice.
Mr. Gasic, Serbia, just moving on slightly, Serbia has been rather neutral in its relationships, especially with Russia. Now, as we know, it is hosting Russian military drills now. So what is behind all his claims?
All Seselj's claims regarding...
So, I mean, Serbia has been a bit pro-Russia lately. So what is behind all the Seselj's claims?
Well, Seselj views any such activity by the government of his former associate and close associate, Mr. Vučić, and indeed President Nikolić. He views their pro-Russian behavior as camouflage intended to create the impression of patriotism and national feeling, to create that image for themselves, while at the same time really moving Serbia away from Russia towards the Western embrace, as it were. So he views this as simply false posturing by Vučić and Nikolić, who are in power at the moment. So he wants to expose that the new world, the emperor's got no clothes, as it were, to use the metaphor. He wants to show that this is simply a falsehood and a fiction on their part.
Okay, we're just going to have to leave it there. Experts in Balkan affairs, Marko Gasic, thank you very much for your time.